Welcome. I'll wait till the screen comes up. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 25th evening meeting of the Washington County Board of Commissioners.
The Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, also serving as the governing body of clean water services and all other county service districts, is now meeting in regular session, August 25th, 2020. Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers via Zoom.
Here.
Commissioner Treese.
Here.
Vice Chair Scouten.
Here.
Chair Harrington.
Here. Thank you. The first item on our agenda tonight, as usual, is oral communication. Is there anyone signed up to testify this evening?
I have no one signed up.
Is there anyone in the room who wishes to testify tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight consists of 6 items. 2 items under Clean Water Services, 3 items under Land Use and Transportation, and 1 item under Support Services. What are the wishes of the Commission?
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, colleagues. The next item on the agenda is presentations. We have 3 presentations tonight, and the first one is just a terrific milestone, a terrific achievement for us here on the Washington County Board of Commissioners. And that is to introduce you this evening to our new county administrative officer. As you may know, our decades-serving county administrator, 16 years as county administrator, Bob Davis, retired last year. We did a national search, and boy, have we gotten a winner here in Tanya Angie. We are delighted to welcome her to Washington County. She comes to us with an incredible range of experience. Most recently, she was with the city of Boulder, Colorado, another beautiful place, but I happen to think Oregon's better. Tanya served as the deputy city manager for the city of Boulder, and she managed portfolios and services serving the community, much like those here in Washington County. So she brings with her a lot of cutting-edge experience and skills in managing large organizations. She also served as a deputy city manager for the city of Mankato in Minnesota. So I know our local mayors will really appreciate having a county administrator that can handle the breadth of our county service suite, standard county services as well as unique ones, and also has an incredible appreciation and experience with the challenges of serving city residents and their portfolio. She's also a credentialed manager through the International City County Management Association, also known as ICMA. And with that and her active involvement there, she is really on the leading edge of using data analytics to ensure that in government, we're providing best-in-class services to our community. So tonight, as part of the introduction of Tanya Angie to all of you in our community, we thought it might be fun if I could kick it off with some questions. So the first question is, Ms. Angie, what excites you about serving as the CAO for Washington County?
Thank you, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. First, I just want to express appreciation for the thoughtful hiring process that you conducted. It was eventful, and now I'm trying to learn people's faces and not just their eyes, since it was really a massed process. But I want to say it was a very thoughtful and appreciate your consideration. And I am honored and humbled to actually sit here before you and sit with the community. What I'm most excited about is my family's excited too. So it's not just me accepting this position. Compass of our family is public service, and so this isn't just about me accepting this position. We are doing this all in as a family. My husband, Sean, and we have 2 children, Liam, who is 12, and hopefully is not at home on Fortnite right now, and our daughter, Claire, who is hopefully in the cul-de-sac playing soccer with her new friends in our neighborhood in Beaverton. So I'm very excited for, frankly, the challenges that we have ahead. Right now, we are living with COVID-19, and I do want to underscore living with, because we need to learn how to live with this and thrive as an organization and a community moving ahead. And we're going to be in some challenging times, and I look forward in working in partnership with the organization and commissioners and the community at large on our challenges together.
Thank you. Next question. Clearly, you are dedicated to public service. Could you tell us more about that?
Yes. So one of the phrases that those who get to know me will hear me say is, we have a responsibility to be stewards of democracy. And frankly, that's what we're doing here tonight in this public meeting, is we're upholding the public process and democracy. And I see my role as being a steward of that. That means I don't own it. I do that in partnership with each and every one of you. And so I hold that true as my value set, and that is a culture that I have brought and fostered with my past organizations, and I am confident that I will continue to do that here. We are better together when we're solving problems together. And I'm going to reference back to COVID-19. It's a complex issue, and it's affecting so many people. And us as Washington County can't tackle it alone. So we need to do that, listen carefully, and really keep at the forefront equity, and also really think through the resilience lens of the decisions that we're making today and how they can impact future generations.
Thank you. And you were experienced with a few other issues in your work with the city of Boulder, including equity. And we are on a great journey together with our community, and we're getting some feedback about that through our current listening sessions as well, that all 5 of us have been participating in. And I thank you, colleagues, for doing that. Is there anything else you want our Washington County community to know about you?
So I'm just going to share a story, because I like to hear people's stories, because I think we learn a lot about each other. Excuse me, when we hear other stories. So my son and I had actually drove together to our new home. And as we were getting close to our neighborhood, my son said, "Mom, I think I can breathe better." I'm like, "What?" And he said it's because of all the trees here compared to even in Boulder, Colorado. And so there's a freshness in the air. So I just want to share that story, and our family is feeling that. And we're excited to be part of this community, and actually very humbled and fortunate at how our neighbors have already embraced us within the neighborhood. We're not sure what the school year looks like. We're going to be navigating that with all the other parents in this community. And so that's a degree of uncertainty that I even have. And so I do think it's about leaning into each other and how we can support each other in these uncertain times.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Is there anything else, my colleagues, that you want to contribute or?
And all those leading questions and the answers. Good questions, though, and thank you for the answers. Washington County is an up-and-coming place, and I think we've hired an up-and-coming chief administrative officer, and I wish you the very best, and that you have very long and productive tenure here at the county, which has been our tradition. I hope that we can continue that.
I'd like to say welcome. I'm so pleased that you're here. I will always be available for help and guidance, and I hope to learn from you as well. So I'm looking forward to developing a relationship where together, all the commissioners and you, Tanya, bring the best to our community. So thanks for showing up.
Yeah, Tanya, I'm going to turn around so I can turn my back to the camera and to you. I do appreciate the time that we spent today. We got to know each other a little bit better, and certainly the priorities, and I look forward to certainly a long tenure and working with you on the challenges that we have, and I'm really excited about you taking this position. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers, anything you'd like to add?
We had that welcome today earlier. Just welcome aboard.
Well, I think I may be the shortest tenured resident of Washington County out of the five of us on the board. Don't know that for sure, but it's a possibility. I just absolutely love it here in Washington County. It's my chosen home, chosen to live here for 30 years and see no reason for that to change. I'm really excited, not only for us, the 5 members of the Board of Commissioners, but also for our 2,000 employees of Washington County. I think you're going to do great things with your new county administrative officer. And I know that she will bring the best out, she will bring the best of us out of us, and including me as a member of your Board of Commissioners. And we have tried to provide Ms. Angie, some information on key folks in our community to get to know very quickly in her first few months here at work. And no doubt there are many, many more who she will get to know and meet 6 months and beyond. We are a great community and we welcome you warmly. Thank you.
I'd also like to just send out a call out and a thank you to the mayor of North Plains and the economic development manager that came to our work session today to meet you and to welcome you. So thanks to Mayor Terry Linehan.
Yes, it was great to see her. Yes. All righty. Well, unless there's anything else, we'll move on to the next presentation. We have a couple of presentations tonight from Health and Human Services. Ordinarily, we welcome Marnie Kyle, our Director of Health and Human Services, up to the table, and frequently she brings her Division Manager for Public Health, Tricia Mortel. Welcome, Tricia, and thank you for pitch hitting tonight so that we continue this successful game of COVID.
Thank you for the introduction, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. So each week we come before you and give you a staff update on where we are with COVID. I really appreciate Ms. Angie talking about living with COVID. That is certainly the goal here. So next slide. Unfortunately, the numbers, we always come with higher numbers. There's no going back. I wish we could, but the goal is let's slow these numbers down, and we're starting to see some slowing, which is hopeful. So as of yesterday, there was 2,921 new confirmed and presumptive cases in the state, getting us up to the total of over 25,000. In Oregon, we've lost 420 lives to this disease. We have across the state seen a slight decrease in hospitalizations. Next slide. What's happening in Washington County mirrors the state. We continue to see those confirmed cases and presumptive cases increasing. I think we have been breathing a very deep sigh in the last few days, the last week in our public health branch, as they have been slower, and so we've been able to be on top of it. We have sadly lost several lives recently, so we now have 36 lost residents of Washington County to COVID-19. We do a lot of work, and I know Marnie has shared and I've shared before, in trying to slow disease in specific settings. So long-term care facilities, other places where people live together, family, residential care, our workplace settings, and those schools, daycares, and camps that opened recently per the governor's state orders. So even though we have high numbers, we tend to have fairly small-ish outbreaks. There was a recent graphic, I should have added it here, but when one of the news stations does little bubbles about how big, I mean, you've seen that one, how big are the outbreaks in the county, and ours is pretty small, and some of the other counties are pretty big, so I guess it's not a competition, but the point here is that we have a fabulous team. As soon as there's 1, 2 cases, really reaching out, really working as hard as they can with each of these industries to get a handle on that. You will continue to see notifications from OHA once we got 5 or more. Last week was a memory care situation, which was very confusing because we did learn in that case that there are some labs out there that aren't certified, and we had some confusion around positive lab reports. So working through new things every day. I think there today was a notification of another Washington County business that had hit that 5 threshold. So, but again, I'm really proud of the work of the team. We have what we call our straight teams, so experts in each of these areas, as well as our infection control team, which are the environmental health sanitarians who usually do that work in the food industry, childcare industry, and other pools, lodging, spas. So they're really used to doing it. So really, in fact, Multnomah County shared that they wish they had put this model in place. We're all learning to do something we've never done before and sharing what works well. So next slide. Phase 2 readiness, our favorite slide. So we continue to have some green and some red. We have a kind of a flat line in the percentage of tests reported positive, so no trend, which is good. It should be going down, but it's no trend. Percent change in cases is down, -4%, as I mentioned. Staff were seeing some low numbers this last week, and I'm breathing through that. We still are slightly high in those cases not linked to each other. In presentations that I've been doing recently, not only do we talk a lot about you need to take precautions with family and friends and outings like our barbecues and our campouts. Your family and friend is no different than the stranger that you're next to. Anyone could have COVID. But the other thing is we need to limit those places that we're going. That's another goal, because the more people you come in contact in size, but also in frequency, the more likely that you will come in contact with COVID. So if we can drive those numbers down, people don't always know where they might have been in contact with someone. For example, people are at large gatherings. We've had a couple of people that went to Sturgis, so that was a large gathering. Average hospitals per day has had an uptrend, as you saw, and that we expected when we had those very severe illnesses and loss of life. And again, tremendous team working with the Oregon Public Health Institute. As you know, they helped us to hire local residents, bilingual, bicultural local residents doing all of the contact tracing. It's been a fabulous partnership, lots of great work development, employment development in our community through that body of work, and they hit 100% again this week in terms of reaching people within 24 hours. So, next slide. So these are the school metrics, the ones that everybody's watching, and there are 3 metrics for us to return children to in-person learning. First is the state positivity rate has to be at or below 5%, and they're getting there. Our county rate has to be at or below 5%, and the last 2 weeks we've been at 4%. So 3 weeks is the goal. So this is one metric that we're meeting at the county level. The state hasn't quite met that metric. Next slide. And then the rate of cases per 100,000. In-person school for all ages would be 30 We are not near that. We're at 34, though. Would be 10. For kindergarten, the younger ages, it would be 30. So we're starting to creep downwards to where we might be able to see the younger age groups being able to go back to school. And if we could maintain those lower rates for a couple of weeks, and we could get the state positivity rate down. So I think we're all looking at how could we do this safely and get some in-person learning, particularly for those younger ages. So.
Maybe you got a slide on that, but so what do we have to do that we're not doing to get these numbers down so we can open up our schools?
I think that, it's the basics we've been saying before: face coverings, hand washing, 6 feet of distance. And the two areas that we're pressing really hard on is the two I just mentioned. Anyone that you are around could have COVID. It doesn't, if they're your best friend, if they're your niece, your nephew, your neighbor, you still need to take the same precautions. And the other is limit the number of places you go and the number of people you get in contact with, and that will reduce your ability to get the disease and spread the disease.
I think another feature is providing education and pressure in that 20 to 40 age group.
Yes, thank you.
Where the rate has been going up at a higher percentage.
Right. So really making sure that those who are not taking precautions can come into considering that this is helpful for everyone. Particularly those most vulnerable to illness, but also so that we can reopen schools and reopen some of our businesses. So. All right, next slide. As you know, Multnomah County was put on the watch list, and so we've been adding this metric for you to see how we might fare. We are not tied to Multnomah County on the watch list. We're only tied to Multnomah and Clackamas for the phases. But this was a new metric, and so we thought it would be important to share with you for a bit. But we've consistently had a fairly much lower number than Multnomah County had. So there are two metrics. One is having a sporadic case rate. Again, those cases not tied to any particular area or person or spot of over 50, and we've been well under that, and we're half of that right now. We will always probably have more than 5 sporadic cases in the past 2 weeks. We're just larger than many other counties, so that metric is one that we'll probably never pass, but it won't be both of those. So, next slide. One of the things that the governor asked in her press conference last Thursday, I believe it was, is that we really thought about what we're doing around enforcement. Early on, we were given 2 choices. Washington County could do some of our work, the work ourselves, or we could ask OHA to do it. We made a decision in the Public Health Division and the HHS Department that it was important for us to do our own local work. And number 2, it is one disease mitigation strategy we have. We don't have a lot. So we have a team, again, environmental health sanitarians who are used to working with food businesses and other businesses, and they really do a lot of education. They take about 60 calls a week. They go out and do inspections if they get more than one complaint for a business. And sometimes that helps turn around those outbreaks, those cases from becoming outbreaks. So again, it's complaint driven. Other people send us the information or ask, but sometimes businesses just ask us. Non-compliance could result in fines, but really the thought is moving towards criminal misdemeanor if we had to go that route. We are really exploring what are the options to effectively and consistently work on non-compliance, and we've had a few instances we are looking into. So we expect to provide you an update next week. We do have a few businesses who are saying it's much harder for me to be closed than it is for me to deal with these regulations. So, but the governor's really asking us to increase targeted education to high-risk businesses. We haven't been able to pinpoint more than a couple. We certainly worry a lot about manufacturing, food production. That's where we have had some worries, and we've worked a lot with those industries. Certainly, another potential could be call centers, but they have done a good job. We've not had too many of those. It's across the board. It's restaurants. It's phone salespeople. It's furniture manufacturing. It's been across the board. So we really just take a approach that everyone needs the support and doing what we can to provide education. And then partnering with community partners, particularly those for minority-owned businesses. How can we have them help with continuing to spread the word that the businesses can help enforce face coverings? It's allowed, and they should do that, and they should help. How can we help them educate their staff to feel confident and competent to stop someone at the door and to make sure that they have good signage so that people are adhering to the face coverings? There was a recent poster that I actually shared with our team here at the county, and it basically is a nice poster that says, face coverings are required here. If you can't wear one, you need to call us and we'll talk to you about how we can give our service to you instead of face-to-face contact. And so we're looking at that, and we can send that out to businesses so that they could do video or they could do a phone, try to figure out how to help the person if there is a problem with wearing a face covering. So we always end with the three things that are important to do. How many people are you going to interact with in this next week? Please keep it little. Keep your distance 6 feet or more, and keep the time that you're interacting with people, even with face coverings, down as much as possible.
Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Rogers?
Am I on mute yet?
We can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Tricia, not for tonight, but for maybe next week or whenever. I've been asked consistently this question: how do we compare to other states, not only in terms of our number of folks who are infected, but also in terms of our standards per thousand? How do our particular governor's standards relate to other governor standards in other states? And I know that we're all independent, but I don't have an answer to that question. So if you could give me some information, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I think where there are some CDC standards. So, for example, I think other states are trying to get their positivity rate below 9%, and our state has been working to try to get it below 5%. We certainly have much lower cases, as you've seen in national news, but we can do you a comparison. I'll get that on next week's agenda.
I think it would be particularly helpful if we could also understand what our standard is compared to Washington State, Idaho, California, and maybe even Montana, our closest
around
states.
us, sure. We're very similar to Washington, as you know. We've been, and there was, California had much higher rates, but I think we've been paralleling. Washington's had a little stricter standards at sometimes, but I think we've been paralleling what we've been doing with Washington.
Well, and I think the danger in looking to other states that have had, that have opened up earlier and then have events where they have to close back down, Florida, case in point.
Yep.
So, I think that it's smart to be looking to see what we look like in the Pacific Northwest and maybe the West Coast. But would that meet your needs? Excuse me, Commissioner Rogers, would that meet your needs?
That's okay, Pam. It's just interesting. People are saying, how do we compare, even with the Floridas and the Texas and the Arizonas? And I have family around the country like all of you do too. And it's just interesting to know. I don't have any information that I can share because I don't know what their standards are. I do know that we use a 5, and I know they use a higher number. I'm not saying if that's good or bad. I don't know. But and I don't know the case per thousand, and I don't know how the standards all are set in their particular state. So just you get questions asked, and if you can't answer them, you look like you don't know exactly what's occurring, and I don't think we want to be in that position.
We'll bring you a snapshot.
And
Thank
also,
you.
it would be good if you have some pointers to information sources where we can lead other people to look for that information versus relying upon us.
All right. Thank you.
Wait, before you go, Couple things. First, I want to continue to compliment you and the team for doing, there isn't an idea about community support through a public health crisis that you and the team aren't willing to consider. So thank you. I want to recognize that on the county's COVID page, you've added a couple of different categories of criteria. And so while we have an evening meeting on camera, I want to just highlight to folks, there is a new tab for metrics for school reopening. So the team has provided you with information at your fingertips, so you can look to see how the community case counts are going for in-classroom school reopening. And also the Washington County data indicators, the team has added a front chart that provides the information about all 3 counties as well as the state. So it's right there at a glance, right at your fingertips. So continue to check out that page. Our staff has been really incredible about putting that together. Then lastly, I have a question for you, Tricia. And it relates to that we're living with COVID. I'm having a little trouble wearing this sweater comfortably. Maybe I'm still rebelling against COVID. I just want it to be gone. And, I have to face the music. I've got this sweater on, but boy, it's feeling itchy. Do you have any tips and tricks for me? I'm practicing all the protocols and whatnot, but I've never had to embrace living with a new, highly communicable, highly infectious disease in my life. Any additional thoughts I should be considering?
Well, I'll go a little different than maybe you're asking. So we've always given you tips on how to mitigate disease, but one of the things we've done a lot with the staff through the EOC and through the public health branch is to think about the positive and really think every day, think what's different in our lives that we can still embrace and we can get behind. I know that in my neighborhood, a lot more people are walking. Walking is good for us. We need to be healthy. The healthier we are, the less likely COVID will impact us severely. We all know the dogs are getting more outdoors walking. Family connections, I hear a lot of people when we do our round robins, what's going well. The family connections through video. So many people are talking about that they've never done that. They're talking to their family more than they would on the phone, and it's kind of fun and novel. So I think that some good things have come out of it. Many people have tried new hobbies or gotten a bike or walking. And if we can keep up with those really healthy practices, mindfulness, gratitude, and good physical health and nutrition, I think that goes a long way to the future and living with COVID and making sure that we don't become ill.
Well, if you could hang on for one more second, because I'd like to turn it over to Mark Jockers. If you could just highlight for our community in this evening's meeting, I know that Clean Water Services worked with other partners for an ag PPE outreach program. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. My name is Mark Jockers. I'm the Government and Public Affairs Director with Clean Water Services, and we've been working closely with Washington County on a project called People Protecting People to distribute personal protective equipment to 3 different areas. One, to the business recovery centers, so we're working closely with the county and the business recovery centers. 2, with community groups, but specifically to what you're asking about is last Thursday, we did a distribution to agricultural workers and food producers here in Washington County, where we distributed about 96,000 KN95 masks and about 550 containers of hand sanitizer to 60 different businesses and individuals that came through, serving about 3,000 workers here in Washington County. We look forward to expanding that in partnership with OSU Extension Service, the Soil Water Conservation District, Washington County and the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Thank you.
Great job.
Anything you want to add with regard to the kind of work you've been doing to support our agriculture workers and community?
I think that that is another important body of work that Washington County stood up early. The community doesn't know, we really put energy and resources into working with those businesses at the very front end about what they could do in terms of mitigation in the field and in the housing. We continue to partner with Virginia Garcia and provide access to testing on a regular basis to our farms, and are currently working with the vineyards because it is vineyard harvest. So we're out there every day, and we really appreciate Clean Water Services helping to get the PPE out on a continual basis, and so really making it easy for businesses to get those.
Well, thank you very much. You've done a great job. I know I've received a lot of feedback about how valuable it's been to have you come to our on-camera meetings and help ensure that our community members have the best available information possible. So thank you for your time and expertise.
Just maybe one other comment or thought. There's no one here from the Sheriff's Department, but we're also concerned about the ongoing situation at the jail. We've been fortunate. I think they've taken some good steps to keep that place safe. And as far as I know, we've been successful in minimizing the amount of COVID in that institution.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to our third presentation of the evening on the Metro West Side Recycling and Transfer Center project update. Welcome, Thomas Eggleston.
Hi, good evening. I was about to say good morning. Good evening, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Tom Eggleston. I'm the interim manager for the Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling Division. And I'm really here this evening to introduce our guest speakers. We have Metro Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez joining us, and Dan Blue is a Metro staff person working on this project. So Metro is working on a West Side transfer station. They have identified a piece of property in the city of Cornelius, and they are examining the possibility of acquiring that property. Metro Council plans to make a decision towards the end of December, the end of this year, on whether or not they're going to purchase that property. So we're here tonight to hear an update from Councilor Gonzalez and Mr. Dan Blue from Metro. And I will stay seated up here in case there's any questions for me from the Washington County staff, and I will just pass it over to Dan and Juan Carlos.
Welcome, Councilor Gonzalez and Mr. Blue. It's great to have you. Please, the floor is yours, or the presentation is yours, however this works in Zoom.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Harrington and commissioners of the Washington County Board. Great to see you virtually. Tom, hi, nice to see your face again virtually. As was mentioned, I'm Councilor Gonzalez this year, serving as the Deputy Council President, and presenting with me is Dan Blue. I'll let Dan introduce himself when he takes over the presentation. I'm just going to tee him up. We hope to cover some of the following questions and really themes around this project. As Tom has mentioned, we've been working on this for quite a while, and we do have a track record of moving in this direction. We want to talk about how we're moving forward with this project and other projects as has been identified in our regional waste plan. We want to talk obviously about our region our role in the region and managing our solid waste facilities. We really want to build a world-class facility and identify the values of what that means and the services for our community. We want to address why the Cornelius site is a preferred site for the development, what types of community involvement and engagement will be necessary for this project to be successful, and finally, the next steps in the process. Next slide, please. The board is obviously familiar with Metro, but for our community members watching tonight, Metro is our regional government, and we serve our 24 cities in 3 counties in the Portland metro area. Next slide. Our work generates economic and cultural opportunity, protects nature and wildlife, and helps create a great place for our region. Along with managing the region's solid waste and recycling system, Metro also owns and operates the Portland area visitor venues like Oregon Zoo, the Oregon Convention Center, the Expo Center, and many parks and natural areas located throughout the region, as well as many other programs and services that we're teeing off with our regional investment strategy. Next slide. So why are we considering this project, the West Side Transfer Station now? Simply put, service equity. And this is something that I've brought up since I've joined the Metro Council in 2019. Really addressing the access, the geographical access, a service rate transparency, and what our consumers are paying for equivalent services, the quality of services, the types of services available to the public, and really in general, the need for more services on the West Side is overdue. This work is a part of our effort to prioritize equity, health, and the environment, as we've identified in our 2030 Regional Waste Plan, with clear goals for maintaining a regional system that ensure equitable distribution and access to services. Our region is growing, and in response to our responsibility to provide these enhancements is also the need to increase the capacity for our solid waste system. I'm particularly excited about the prospects of this project in Washington County. There are so many opportunities economically to create jobs. I've brought this up already a few times in the presentation, but really increasing the accessibility of services that people have on the West Side with this transfer station and recycling center. From here, I can pass it off to Dan, and he can tell you a little bit more on the technical side about the elements of the project.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. Chair Harrington, nice to see you again. And commissioners, nice to meet all of you. My name is Dan Blue. I'm a systems planning manager for Metro, and I've been working in the solid waste and recycling system in the region for over 20 years. Before this, I was out at the city of Gresham managing their solid waste program. And before that, Portland State. So I am a Forest Grove resident and proud Washington County resident, and really excited to be here tonight. On my screen, I can see right now one Carlos Gonzalez, and I see a very small picture of the screen. Is that okay? Are we good right with this view? Okay.
Yes, we can see your presentation, and we
Perfect.
also have a screen where we can see all your faces as well.
Got it. Fantastic. I'm only working off my laptop tonight, so I just wanted to check in on that. We can jump to the next slide, please. Okay, so this group of Metro councilors should look familiar to you. We can jump ahead. And what I wanted to do tonight is kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing here, what the proposed project is, a little bit of history about Metro and the solid waste system and the current state of affairs of the system, introduce you to what a modern facility looks like. And this is a picture of the Factoria transfer station up in the Seattle-King County area, and talk about some of the services that we're proposing for a new transfer station, and also inform you about how we're approaching community engagement around this project at this property acquisition phase. Next slide, please. And then we can jump over this one. Councilor Gonzalez covered that. Okay. So a little bit about the history of Metro in the region, and particularly transfer stations. So our management of the regional solid waste system dates back to 1974, when Metro's predecessor, the Metropolitan Service District, adopted a solid waste management plan called the CORMET plan. In 1983, Metro built the first publicly owned transfer station known as the Metro South Transfer Station, and that's in Oregon City. Metro Central Transfer Station was built in 1993 in the Northwest Industrial District. And also, it should be noted, in 1990, Metro had actually acquired property in the south part of Hillsborough for a public transfer station. There was some local opposition to that, particularly from one large industry, and that kind of put an end to that project. And so it's kind of surprising to me that we're back 30 plus years later, finally trying to fulfill a commitment that was made by Metro a long, long time ago. Next slide, please. So this is a map of our region. And as you can see on the map, there's 8 transfer stations in the region. 2 of them are publicly owned. I would like to point out, and those are the 2 red dots, Metro South and Metro Central. I want to point out that the publicly owned transfer stations offer a full suite of services serving commercial, residential customers with recycling drop-off, household hazardous waste services, as well as other amenities. Some of the private stations do provide public drop-off and some don't, but we're the only services or facilities that provide that broad range of services. Next slide, please. So talking about services, I want to cover some of the things that a new modern transfer station would provide. So if we end up building this facility, it would include public and business self-haul services, so that residents can bring trailers of demolition debris or other waste to the facility, which would be compacted and reloaded for other destinations. Next slide, please. This would also include business self-haul services. Sorry. In addition to self-haul services, a basic recycling depot and drop-off component would be included in the design, and this would offer expanded recycling services beyond what folks can just recycle at the curb. Next slide, please. We would also offer a household hazardous waste service, and this would include material drop-off and processing center would be included in the design of a new facility. So think about things like paint, lawn chemicals, other types of things, and maybe even prescription drug drop-off, sharps, those kinds of things. Next slide, please. The station will also accept waste generated by residential and commercial routes from route collection companies throughout the western part of Washington County and the region. Next slide, please. Make sure that we're synced up here. We are. So in addition to the basic services that I've just described, we would like to incorporate expanded community services into the design and construction of a new modern transfer station. And as Councilor Gonzalez said, we're really thinking about a world-class station. A short but not exhaustive list of these enhanced public services include, but are not limited to, an education and learning center focused on sustainable stewardship as it relates to reuse, recovery, and recycling in the environment. And next slide. Potentially, we could have a reuse and resale store or partner with one of the local partners, such as Habitat Restore. I know there's one here in Forest Grove. But the idea here is that we would put some focus on fixing and restoring items that have better potential remaining useful life as opposed to sending it to the landfill. Next slide. One of the things we're looking at is providing community meeting space, gathering opportunities for local residents and businesses or others in the community. Next slide, please. Some modern transfer stations even include such amenities that are kind of park-like. These are the kinds of things that we would be meeting and talking with local community about and trying to identify needs that could work collaboratively with a transfer station like we are proposing. Next slide. It's also important to note that as Metro continues to enhance our public solid waste system, additional improvements and program considerations will be implemented. Some of these improvements may include things that can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the region associated with our garbage and recycling collection and transfer system. Next slide. We also want to consider flexible space for future operations. Today's design standards for this type of facility will allow for operational flexibility. This approach supports a design that is nimble and responsive to changing markets and material collection methods. When our current facilities were built 30 years ago, there was a lot of different materials coming through those facilities. And today, there are things that they could not have imagined having to handle in terms of different types of packaging and plastics, et cetera. Next slide. We also want to make sure that we're inputting or creating more resilience in our overall system. And so we're looking at opportunities to identify places for disaster debris staging in the awful instance that that big earthquake comes, but also having a West Side emergency operations center where Metro could make sure that we're able to continue to provide collection services. Next slide. Also considering that such things as renewable natural gas or other alternative fuel technologies adoption and potential electrification of various parts of our solid waste collection and transfer system. Next slide. Okay, and then finally, I mentioned the electrification. I just heard that one major hauler has put in an order for over 100 all-electric garbage collection trucks, which is pretty exciting. Not in this region, but elsewhere in the country. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Next slide. So, what does a state-of-the-art transfer station, recycling and materials management facility look like? The next set of slides will provide some examples of those facilities. Over the last year, Metro staff and actually some of Cornelius's elected officials and others had the opportunity to travel to Seattle area, and we're fortunate to tour some of the newer King County facilities and the new Seattle Public Utility facilities. This is a picture of the King County Factoria transfer station located in Bellevue, Washington, just on the eastern edge of Seattle. This was built in 2016. Next slide. So this is this is another picture of that same building. This is an 80,000 square foot facility built to LEED standards. That's leadership in energy and environmental design. It was built to LEED Gold standards. It sits on 15 acres. And some of that acreage is set aside. It was the location of a prior facility. This station cost about approximately $90 million and included extensive additional site improvements and conditions, including a major land shoring project to protect the new station. So we really like this facility, and this is sort of the scope of what we're considering for a site here in Washington County, which I'll get into in a few minutes. Next slide. Okay. This is the Shoreline transfer station in King County. This was completed in 2008. This is built on 13 acres, bordered by I-5 to the east and a very residential neighborhood just to the west. This was designed and built to LEED Platinum standards. And some of the sustainable features of this station include a rainwater harvesting system, solar roof panels, and daylighting throughout the facility. Next slide. Here's an interior photo of the Shoreline station. Just want to point out, you can see this is a clear span building that provides a lot of flexibility for changing materials as the region grows with the new station. Next slide. This is a really unique transfer station. This is the Seattle Public Utilities Seattle North transfer station. This was built on an existing transfer station site and completed in 2016. This is also built to LEED Platinum standards. It's a 72,000 square foot building. This one was expensive to build. It cost nearly $108 million and is set right in the middle of the Wallingford neighborhood, which sits on the water there. It's a prosperous community, and the building itself is surrounded by residential, as well as retail, restaurants, shopping, etc. Next slide. Here's another view of that same facility. You can see that the transfer station is just a little bit to the right center of the frame in the back of the picture there. And this is just to illustrate sort of the close proximity to businesses and the residential neighborhood. Next slide. I love this photo. This is taken on the inside of the Education and Interpretive Center inside the Seattle North facility. You can see people just checking out how garbage is handled and pushed around in the facility and put into the compactor bays. People love to visit this place. Like I said, it's right next to a neighborhood. Next slide. Here's another view of that same room, and you can actually see a person there with their child. People from the local community love to stop in. They bring their kids on a daily basis just to watch the movement in the building. Really nice interpretive center. Next slide. Okay, so this is the Tacoma transfer station, a little bit more utilitarian when compared to the King County and the Seattle Public Utility stations. But again, this is a full service station with full service household hazardous waste, recycling drop off, and great flexibility to expand as the recovery and recycling market changes. Next slide. Okay. Switching gears a little bit here. So we've shared some of the drivers for the project and some of the examples of what a modern facility looks like. I'd like to switch gears now and talk about the project itself, which is focused at this phase on property acquisition and initial community engagement. So in 2018, Metro, with the help of commercial industrial properties consultant, we were tasked with finding suitable property for which to potentially develop a transfer station on the western portion of the Metro region. So we and a consultant, we reviewed a lot of different properties throughout the region. And there was a lot of things on the market, but not that many of them suitable for our needs. After much review and elimination of unsuitable properties, we identified 6 properties that appeared suitable. Of these 6 properties, 3 were located in the Cornelius Industrial District. We then contacted the City of Cornelius staff and have been working closely with them over the last almost year to identify, to look at a potential property and go through a due diligence process. So by siting in Cornelius, we recognize the proximity to the Hillsborough landfill and the opportunity to lessen the transfer distance for dry solid waste collected at a new station. So next slide, please. So we did land on a particular site in the city of Cornelius, and in partnership with the city staff, we stayed away from the certified shovel-ready property, but did identify a suitable industrial piece of property in their industrial zone. This property is located on the intersection almost of 4th Avenue and Holladay Street. Next slide. This is a picture of that property, approximately 12 acres. It's industrial land. We understand that the development of this property will require Metro to be responsible for street improvements on Holladay Street. There would be an actual a new street alignment on the northern edge, which is on the right side of that picture. These improvements will ultimately tie the Forest Grove and City of Cornelius industrial parks together, allowing for easier east-west access to both of those industrial areas. Next slide. So when we are looking at this particular property, we started to recognize that there's a lot of potential synergies with existing businesses in the area. We've got Myers Containers moving into that large building labeled B in the photo. New Season Foods is on the left side of that photo, and they're a food manufacturer and packager, not New Seasons Market, but a different company. Truss Components is just to the north of the property, labeled D. S&H Compost is labeled A and also to the north of the property. And so these types of businesses with a new modern transfer station in its midst, I think can lead to some synergies and considerations around potentially like a eco park or opportunity for those businesses to play off of each other. Next slide. So we have had that particular parcel under a purchase and sale agreement with the sellers for approximately 9 months, and we have been completing an extensive site investigation process of due diligence, including environmental assessments, geotechnical assessments, understanding watershed impacts, doing some surveying and lane clearing, and also trying to understand the cultural and anthropological history of the site. And we're doing all of this to make sure that it's a good fit for siting a potential facility. And everything has been turning out pretty good. We've actually wrapped up. You can go to the next slide, please. We've actually wrapped up all of our site-specific investigation work, and everything is looking pretty good. And we think it's a suitable location for a facility. Next slide. So now that we have done our due diligence work on the property itself, we're also focusing on community engagement, and this next slide helps us transition into that. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that from the get-go, we want to make sure a new facility will be viewed as a community asset and not a burden, as often garbage facilities have historically been seen. We want to make sure that these facilities bring to life the values and principles of the regional waste plan and deliver operational efficiency in the near and longer term as the region continues to grow. So we are focusing on such benefits as environmental health, opportunities to create jobs and additional investments in the area, provide community amenities, many of which I showed examples of in the earlier photos. Make sure that we're focusing on cultural and social equity with the development of this project. And as Councilor Gonzalez pointed out, meet a service equity need in Washington County. Next slide. Okay, so I think it's important for citizens of Washington County to understand how we're approaching community considerations and how we as a public agency recognize the need to mitigate as many potential negative community impacts as possible. We are committed to work closely with and for the members of the community to first decide whether or not this facility is desired by the local community, and if so, how such a facility should be designed to look, to feel, and perform as an asset to them. So we've formed a strong team internally that will ensure citizen and community organization input will be integral in decision-making at all points across our planning process. Next slide. COVID has been an impact for us. And so like we're presenting to you virtually tonight, we have been working with community members virtually. Just this slide just talks about some of those impacts. And I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to the next slide, please. Okay, so before COVID, we had this time frame. We're essentially about 3/4 of the way through year one, where the first phase of the project is looking at, okay, great. The first phase of the project is looking at due diligence and also launching community engagement. As I mentioned, we've wrapped up our investigation of the physical site, but we're still in the middle of engagement. We had hoped by about this part of the project to start lining up design and build work related to this project, but we're slowing that down a little bit due to COVID and also budget impacts at Metro, but we're still deeply involved in community engagement work at this time. I want to point out that we have formed a community advisory group in the area of Cornelius. We have 12 members representing that community, and they have begun meeting virtually. I think they're actually having their third meeting as we speak tonight here. There was a conflict, so we had to split up our team tonight. Some of them are holding a community engagement meeting, and I'm here with you tonight. So next slide. Okay, so in addition to the community advisory group that I just mentioned, we have a lot of different opportunities to share this project with the community, including tonight in front of all of you. We are going in front of the City of Hillsborough Council. We'll be going to Forest Grove Council. We've already presented to City of Cornelius to their council twice, as well as their planning commission once. We will be holding an industry roundtable, and that will focus on garbage haulers and garbage transfer station operators, as well as a local business roundtable for those businesses that would be in the immediate vicinity of the new site. We'll be presenting to local solid waste directors, and then going through an internal process of presenting to a couple of advisory boards internally at Metro. And all of this is leading up to a decision by Metro Council in December whether or not to proceed with acquisition of the property. Next slide. So I think that's the conclusion of my slides. I just wanted to throw out there that we want to hear from everyone. We'd like to understand the best way to hear from you going forward, and also let you know that there are a couple of ways to stay informed in this project aside from just going directly to us. We have two websites, one for this project on the west side, and then we're also working on a project in Oregon City. And so what you see on the screen right now are ways to get regular newsletters about how these projects are proceeding. And next slide. This is just the project team. Matt Tracy is actually our project manager. He's involved in that community advisory group meeting tonight. Gloria Pinzon is our community engagement coordinator, and Enrique Vargas is our engagement specialist. This whole team is working extensively on this West Side project, and all of us are available to you. And I think with that, I will be quiet and see if there's any questions or feedback that you would like to provide to me.
Commissioners, any questions, comments?
No, thank you. That's a very instructive and mind-expanding kind of presentation. I hadn't thought about all those other sort of amenities and functions that could be that is currently part of a sort of a cutting-edge facility up in the Puget Sound area. I thought that was all very interesting and very, very fascinating, and the concept that this could be an asset rather than something people are going to fight about because it's seen as a tremendous liability and problem in the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Willie?
I con-
Go ahead, Roy.
uh, I like the project, no issues. I completely unrelated to all of this. What are you doing, Dan, with the recycled material? We were all excited to be recyclers, and I understand we're putting it all in landfills now. Any change in that or any market?
That's a great question, Commissioner Rogers. I appreciate that. And we are not sending a lot of recyclables from our region to the landfill, in part because we have a strong history and tradition in the metro region and with our partner cities of doing a really good job of recycling and recycling relatively cleanly compared to other states. Our recyclables are being collected. They are going to material recovery facilities, and such as Far West Fibers here in Washington County and others throughout the metro region. And those materials are being recovered and sent to market still. There's definitely some hard to recycle stuff in our stream. But if folks would read what's on top of their roll carts and put in the stuff that it says to put in and not put in the stuff that shouldn't be in, we'd have a lot easier time with that. So thank you for that.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Sure.
Where does the product go currently?
May I ask which product you're referring to?
Well, the same product that's going to go to this facility, where is it going now?
Oh, thank you. So Forest Grove Transfer Station is not too far from the proposed site, and they are taking a lot of route-based commercial and residential garbage that is then reloaded, not compacted, but reloaded into tractor trailers, which goes to Arlington, the waste management landfill in the Columbia Gorge. The Forest Grove Transfer Station does accept some self-haul material as well. And so it is anticipated that if we were to open a facility, we may see some of that tonnage flow away from Forest Grove and to us. And we are talking with Waste Management about that. With the closure of, or the inability to take material to River Bend, I think it is an opportunity for us to help out with that tonnage that currently flows to Forest Grove.
I guess I'm trying to remember a conversation I had probably a year ago about this, and the restrictions that have been put on the Forest Grove Transfer Station to kind of facilitate this. So I'm trying to figure out if this is a good thing for the Forest Grove Transfer Station or not. And at the same time, I'd like to hear what the Cornelius mayor and city council think about this project.
Sure. I'll try to address the first part. I'm not personally involved in conversations with Waste Management about their transfer station. I do understand that we have been having conversations about the future impact of any new transfer station. I do want to reiterate that the two publicly owned transfer stations and this proposed facility would provide a much broader range of services to the public than what they are able to do, and also provide increased capacity beyond what the current Forest Grove Transfer Station can provide, recognizing that we are a growing region, particularly with the new developments in the south part of Hillsborough, high counts of new permits being issued in Cornelius and Forest Grove. So we're a little bit of a different model than the Forest Grove Transfer Station. I can't tell you or predict exactly what the long-term impact would be on that station at this time, but we would keep you posted as we continue to have conversations with Waste Management and the city of Forest Grove about that. So far, to your second question about Mayor Dalen and the other members of the City of Cornelius Council and many of their community members, I'll say, there's initial skepticism about the benefits of this project, but once we go through the presentation like I've provided tonight, and we actually took Mayor Dale, we took Mayor Dale and other members of their council up to Seattle with us. And I think that I can say they are largely supportive of the concept and excited to see this new facility come into their community.
Okay, thank you. I think probably, again, this is a dated conversation, but it seems to me that their biggest concern was they're giving up industrial acreage, 12 acres of kind of what and they don't have much industrial acreage available out there. They'd much prefer to see that be an employment center in their industrial sanctuary there that they've got. So, I'd be interested to see, just tracking with that, to see how they move along with that. I'm personally, as a consumer in Hillsborough, I'm pretty excited about this. I can get to this facility in about 10 or 15 minutes, and I have a stockpile in my garage of things that I need to take much further distance right now. So this sounds pretty attractive to me.
Thank you for those comments. I recommend that maybe you look for options for that stockpile, because it is going to take quite a few years to get this thing built if we proceed with it.
Yeah, my wife has a slow fuse on the garage overflow. So yeah,
Right.
It's going to have to leave pretty soon.
We can help you with that.
I was going to ask a similar question, but what are the employee numbers that the transfer station would have?
That's a great question. Thank you. At this stage, it's kind of early to estimate the number of employees. I can tell you that our Metro South transfer station has approximately 60 employees, but that is largely due to the aging facility and how it was never intended to do what it is doing today. We have kind of thrown out the number of around 30 employees, and we would work with the local community on workforce development, construction career pathway projects, other kinds of community agreements to make sure that local residents have an opportunity to receive training, education, whatever they need to apply competitively for jobs at the new transfer station. And that's one of the things that I'm most excited about in working with that local community.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners so far? No? Well, I've got a couple. I'm surprised that a couple of our commissioners haven't asked about the financing of this yet. You've shown us pictures of beautiful facilities. You've talked about an incredible range of services. I imagine you might be considering a revenue bond, leveraging the tip fee for this site or something else. Could you speak to that possibility a little bit?
I will attempt to speak to that, and I might ask Councilor Gonzalez to weigh in as well, but I am working on the acquisition phase at this point, and what we have identified some of our reserve funds to be able to use for purchasing property, both here and in the south part of the region. But we are also talking about, particularly given our budget issues currently, talking about going out for revenue bonds for potentially acquiring the properties. The design and build portion of this is really to be determined, but potentially there's bonding that could be done, and I would anticipate some kind of tip fee rate impact region-wide. It wouldn't just be borne by the residents of Washington County. It would be something that could be seen across the tip fees across the whole region. There's more to come on that, and Councilor Gonzalez, if you wanted to add anything to that, please do.
All right, Dan, you've done such a great job at peeling away the layers of intentionality of how we wanted to curate the project and the process and engage folks. So I'm very, very proud to be presenting with you. So good job. Chair Harrington, that's a fantastic question, and obviously one that we're grappling with. Our staff has presented us with multiple scenarios on different revenue sources, all originating from our solid waste system, from tipping fees to the regional system fee, and combinations, phasing over time, et cetera. But I believe that those conversations are going to continue, and we're not very close to a decision on that, because we still have quite a bit to do before we get there.
Well, I will just comment on that. When I started my 12-year Metro Council career, Metro still had the completion of the revenue bond for the construction of the Metro Central Transfer Station. So if there's any local government that knows how to fund this and put in place a facility that will last for decades, it's Metro. You've got a great team. Thank you for answering that question. I'm really impressed with how you're going about this. You're looking into a lot of positive value for everyone here in the community. So I want to make sure that you hear that compliment. Job well done so far, and I know you'll do a good job moving ahead on behalf of the community. In the 30-year history of elected Metro councilors, Deputy Council President Juan Carlos Gonzalez is just the third Metro councilor in those 30 years for District 4. I can tell you with certainty, based upon information from my then predecessor to present day, that there is 15 years of built-up interest in having a full-service facility provided here on the west side. But what I can't tell you, and I'm hoping you can help me better understand, what might the travel shed be for the potential customers for this facility? Could you help enlighten me there?
That's a question for you, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Councilor
And
Gonzalez.
we can bring one of your slides back up if a map might help.
Sure, I recommend slide number, well, how about number 9, the solid waste system map, please?
I'll let you know when it's on the screen.
Okay. Yeah, to take a stab at that question, we have,
It's on screen.
thank you. So you can see Metro Central and you can see Metro South, and we routinely survey customers at both of those facilities, including identifying where they are coming from. And I'll let you know, Metro South does draw a lot of customers from the southern part of Washington County, the western portions of Clackamas County. And I would think that customers may come from Tigard, Tualatin, parts of Beaverton, but probably the western parts of Beaverton, but also from neighboring communities such as North Plains and Banks and Gaston. And I think that the ability to drop off household hazardous waste in particular is a service that simply doesn't exist in Washington County, aside from our Metro collection events, which happen at different days and different times throughout the year. So we have not done a super deep dive into the catchment area, but I think definitely Hillsborough, parts of Beaverton, parts of Tigard, and then all the way west. Does that answer your question, Chair Harrington?
Sorry, Mike. It sure does. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
And if we could flash up your second to the last slide as well, because you had a question for us. And I think the question was along the lines of how might we want to be updated?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, how the best method to engage with you in the future. This is an area that is in my domain, as well as Commissioner Jerry Willey's domain as a part of our districts, but clearly it's going to affect all 5 of our districts. So I'm a frequent user of your website, so I know I can go to Future West and be updated there. I'm really impressed with the level of engagement that you showed us with the previous slide. So I know I don't have any further needs, but commissioners, are you okay with this, or do you think that we want them to come back before December or after that in January and let us know what's up?
I'd personally like to depend on our staff to follow this, and then when you think it's an important time for us to have additional information or a decision point, please get on our agenda.
Certainly, we can certainly commit to doing that.
That work for the rest of you?
Yes.
Commissioner Rogers, do you thumbs up with that? Okay, terrific. Tom, you do a great job for us, so I really like the sound of that plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything? Whoop.
I was just going to say thank you to Councilor Gonzalez and to you, Dan, for your presentation today.
Our pleasure.
Is there anything you'd like to close with today?
Only thing I forgot to mention is that we are presenting to the county city managers tomorrow as well, a shortened version of what I just provided for you tonight. And so there's that. And I just wanted to thank you all for your time and your excellent questions. And what I'm hearing is some positive support for the proposal. And that's what I've heard consistently as we talk to various elected officials and organizations and community members. So I really appreciate your time.
And we do a good job of keeping in touch with Tom as well. So if you're ever wondering, he's a good go-to person. And I want to also thank you, Deputy Council President Gonzalez, for joining us tonight. There are 4 members of the 7-member Metro Council whose districts include a portion of Washington County. Councilor Gonzalez's district is entirely in Washington County, in one county with multiple cities, which is a unique characteristic of District 4. But I really appreciate that you are the one member who we see time and time again to bring us on the journey of the good work you're doing.
It's because you keep inviting me, Chair, and you so I don't take that for granted.
Well, thank you both for staying healthy and doing good work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
All righty, that's it for presentations for this evening. We'll now move on to the action section of our agenda. And the first item comes to us from the Office of Community Development. So we'd like to welcome Jenny Proctor up to the table on a proposal to approve an additional round of CARES Act funding under the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. Take it away, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. The action item before your board today is to approve the allocation plan for the second installment of the Emergency Solutions Grant CARES Act funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. When I presented the first allocation of ESG funding back on June 2nd, I informed your board of the consultation efforts that had been undertaken at that time to reach out to our community and service providers. For this allocation, we utilized the information that was collected during that process. It didn't make sense to recreate the wheel, and there is a certain amount of fatigue that comes with going back to our service providers time and time again. We did consult with our Housing and Supportive Services Network, both at their July meeting and at their August meeting. We wanted to make sure that we remained in alignment with the system of care for those who are homeless and at risk. So there were no comments from the Housing and Supportive Services or the HISN at the August meeting. They were fully supportive of the allocation plan. The allocation plan is very much focused on the current impacts of the pandemic on people who are literally homeless. So our proposal is to allocate $368,000 in ESG funds to community action to expand the current level of outreach. The focus is on increasing the FTEs so that we can have adequate geographic coverage and cover more days and hours as well to make sure we are getting enough contact. Community Action will sub-grant the funds to 6 agencies: Home Plate, Open Door, Luke Dorf, Project Homeless Connect, Just Compassion, and the Forest Grove Foundation. We are also proposing to allocate $400,000 to the Washington County Department of Housing Services to leverage other local and federal grant dollars to fund the severe weather shelter. Annette Evans, the homeless programs manager, is working very hard with the service provider agencies to reconfigure the severe weather shelter model to address the safety aspects of congregate shelters. The intention, although the work is still evolving, is to create 4 to 5 shelter sites or what they're calling hubs that will be open for 90 days and possibly longer depending on the budget available. And there will be approximately 30 people per site. The new hub model will work to prevent the transmission of diseases spread by providing daily shelter resources that are co-located in Western County, South County, Beaverton, and Hillsborough. The model will leverage the outreach relationships being developed through the other funding that we have and prioritizing local homeless persons located near the hub shelter sites. We are also proposing to fund and allocate over $1.2 million for rental assistance for rapid rehousing that is targeted to help move people from the street into housing. The remaining funds will be allocated for administrative costs that will be dedicated for the Office of Community Development as well as community action. The allocation plan did go to our Policy Advisory Board on August 13th, and the PAB did approve that plan to be forwarded to your board tonight. So I'd be happy to take any questions that you have on the allocation plan.
Commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any questions on the proposal or the allocations. My question is more along the lines of getting the homeless into a facility, into a home. And I refer back to the fairgrounds tent facilities that we have there, and that is not at capacity. And I kind of thought, we're providing meals, 3 meals a day, showers, just a really nice facility, and yet it isn't fully subscribed, I guess. So what difference will we make here in providing housing for, it seems like a community of folks that are resistant to moving into housing? So I guess that I'm probably not directed at this, but that's just a question that I have when I'm just watching what we're providing and it's not fully utilized.
I think my response to that is that there are just so many different situations for different households that some may not be ready to move into housing and some are ready. And so it's meeting them where they are. Some of the folks that you talked about that might be at that one shelter may not be ready, but some of them may be ready. Some of the folks that the outreach providers will connect with on the street may be ready and able to move into housing. So I think the intent of all the funding is to place it in as many areas of focus that we can capitalize on the people and where they are in their needs. I'm not sure if that directly answers your question, but it has the $1.2 million for the housing will serve approximately 45 households up to 18 months of assistance. So it's not a huge population that can be served, even though that is a lot of money.
Yeah, and again, I'm not opposed to this. I'm just curious as to what this will look like at the end of this period of time. I don't know if you told us how long this money is going to be good for, but at the end, love to have a report back assuring me that what we spent $1.2 million on was money well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to come back and report out on the CARES Act funding. And under this particular grant, we actually have 6 years to spend it. It's not like the CRF funding, which is a really tight timeline. Of course, we won't spread it over 6 years, but that's what the federal government allows. The rent assistance can go for a longer period, or for a 2-year period. The outreach dollars will be spent more quickly, probably a year or so.
Well, I certainly like the fact that we're partnering with Community Action. That's a great organization, and so, yeah, I like the way we're doing this.
Thank you.
And Jenny, the rapid rehousing, the individuals or the families that you're dealing with they haven't been unhoused for as long a period of time as the people who may be camping at the fairgrounds. Is that correct?
They may not be, but they could
They
be.
could be.
Yeah, it's where,
It's a different dynamic is what and
right.
You mentioned the Policy Advisory Board, or the PAB, that's the advisory body for for your department and for money expended at community development block grant dollars and home dollars. Just wondering if you could share, or perhaps Commissioner Treese, any thoughts or discussion that led to their recommendation that we approve this project, if I understood you correctly.
There were a lot of questions just about where the money would go. No questions about concerns about where the money would go, but just understanding the systems and understanding the rent. Some of the questions delved into other areas as well. So there were no issues of concern about the allocation plan.
I think it's also fair to say that there's an understanding that this is CARES Act related, which is very different in a disaster management context than the other work that the PAB does with CDBG dollars.
But did the PAB take some time to sort of digest and sort of discuss and kick this around before I assume they did before they
I'm
made
sorry, could you
recommendations?
repeat that?
I said, was there some discussion or something that was ideas batted around before? Maybe I misunderstood you. I thought you said that the PAB has recommended to us that we approve this project.
Yeah, the PAB has been informed kind of all along the way, starting back in, April, May, when we did all the consultations. So they've been kind of kept up to date with what we've been hearing from service providers. And one of the, main takeaways back in May was outreach was critically important. Rent, of course, was critically important, both prevention and rehousing. There's been quite a bit of money put into prevention with the CRF funding and the prior allocation of CDBG. So the focus for this money was really on kind of pulling all of the homeless efforts, outreach, shelter, and housing to kind of create that continuum of services.
And I'd also say that the PAB didn't challenge, if you will, the staff's recommendation either, that it was a different context, as I mentioned before.
Okay. Well,
but certainly involved.
Okay. So are they recommending, did I hear you to say that there was a recommendation from PAB to forward this project for approval at the county board, or simply that they had looked at it?
Yes, absolutely. What goes before the Policy Advisory Board is to endorse funding allocations and plans that then go to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval, because the board is the grantee for the funds.
Right. But I'm talking about this specific project. Was this something that came to our?
The PAB endorsed this plan for your approval at its meeting on August 13th.
Okay, so that's, okay. I thought it was a simple question, and I thought that was the case. Yeah, thank you.
But I will also say that I have not been providing updates from the PAB meetings at our work sessions like I should. So I had talked to the chair about this. I'll do a better job of telling you what happened at the last PAB meeting too. So that'll help.
Yeah, thank you. Well, exactly. That line was there. And I just, I want to talk about the PAB a little bit, because the PAB is is a body that we have a representative on the PAB, as well as typically either a mayor or a city councilor from nearly all the other cities in the county. And I have found it over the years to be, I have been a longtime member, a thoughtful group, well representative of elected officials across the county. And so I thought it was important to point out that this was something that was approved by the PAB as an endorsed project.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, and it was unanimous.
Thank you.
Any other questions or contributions, commission members? I have a couple. When you do the return on investment cost modeling that Commissioner Willie is asking for with regard to the safe camping, I'm not using the right phrase, for the program out at the fairgrounds, Safe Village. Safe Sleep Village, thank you. I couldn't find the words. Team effort here. One of the great values of that is connecting folks with services at the time that they're ready and getting them out of unauthorized, unsanitary camps, particularly in Western Washington County. If we didn't have this Safe Sleep Village, then if someone contracts COVID, they might be in the hospital and even in ICU. And so when you do that cost modeling, you can take an average hospital stay. Then once they're released from the hospital, they may need additional time for recovery. And the solution that we have here in Washington County for our houseless community members is the respite shelter. So then you add on top of that what it costs for 2 weeks there at the respite center. So there's a cost comparison model to take time frame in the Safe Sleep Village versus if we did not have such a capability. Just an idea. I really appreciate the effort that's gone into this. I do have a bit of a detailed question with regard to the admin cost coverage. And there are two parts to this. And I don't mean to ask a complex multivariable question, but that's what I find myself doing. So I see that you've done a really good job of distributing the available funding for admin costs. Community Action Organization is doing a tremendous amount of work. A grant funding that has worked through your office as well as through the state. I mean, it's just incredible how they have ramped up to really meet the needs of our community. And then there's your office's time admin. So you've split up 7% for community action, 3% for Washington County OCD. And I'm wondering, okay, so the cap is 10% total. Is that sufficient with this model to cover the cost of delivery of service that community action has? Or is that putting additional pressure on the fundraising that they need to do, that their board of directors needs to do? Additionally, for the Washington County Office of Community Development, are we going to need to be putting some dollars from our general fund into action in order to take care of any gap that there may be between that 3% and what it costs for you and your team to do this work?
Right. So relative to the question about gap filling from the general fund for the Office of Community Development, no. We are able to take 20% of the CDBG allocation for administrative costs. So we have fully funded ourselves with that, and we took the 10% from the first allocation. So that is why we went less with this particular grant. Community Action time and time again steps up to meet the needs of this community. And often with our smaller grants, we say to Community Action, we can't provide administrative costs. We need to keep those funds for ourselves. They say, we will find other funds to figure that out, to cover those costs. With these funds, we felt it was really critical. We were asking them so much to ramp up for these funds in such a quick time frame that we felt it was important. And it was Community Action who told us what would be a fair amount and what they could work with. So that's what they were given. So the 7% that they are using was acceptable to them.
Well, terrific. Thank you very much for doing that and for explaining it so well to me. I really appreciate it. As always, I'm impressed with the suite of services that is being provided across our community and the excellent work that you and your team do to help ensure that we as Washington County are meeting the needs, the tremendous need that exists out in our community.
Thank you.
So that is the proposal. What are the wishes of the commission? We have a motion and a second. Thank you. To approve the ESG-CV2 CARES Act funding in the amount of $2,214,134 and to authorize staff to incorporate these activities into the 2019 action plan for submittal to HUD, and to authorize the chair to execute the HUD funding agreement for the ESG-CV2 award. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, commissioners. We have a second action item. This is a new item that was added to our agenda yesterday related to support services. And so we have Jack Liang, our Director of Support Services, as well as Tricia Mortel, our Public Health Division Manager here in Health and Human Services, to make a proposal for us to approve an allocation of the CARES Act CRF Contingency Fund to support Child Care Assistance Program. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Good afternoon, good evening, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. I am in front of you with this agenda to allocate CARES Act CRF Contingency Fund to support Child Care Assistance Program. At the June 2nd, 2020 board meeting, your board has reviewed and approved the entire portfolio of the $104.6 million of the CARES Act CRF funding. And with that approval, Support Services Finance has taken up the planning, the monitoring, and the reporting responsibility of this funding portfolio. And we have created a procedure for specifically any new request of the funding from the programs to be presented to finance, and then we will review the eligibility of the programs, and then present that, embed that with the CAO to review the county directions on that, and then bring it to your board for review and approval. So with that $104.6 million portfolio, you have approved $7.5 million in the contingency fund, and we have came to a new program, a new request from the Department of Health and Human Services toward the direction of the child care assistance. As an original allocation, you have approved $4 million towards the child care assistance. It is identified by the Department of Health and Human Services that is not quite enough for the program. And in addition, there is added scope to the program that would need additional funding. I will pass it on to Tricia Mortel to provide more details to your board.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. Next slide. Again, Tricia Mortel, Washington County Public Health Division Manager. As Jack has mentioned, we are in the Health and Human Services administering the $4 million that were allocated by the board to support our child care system and child care businesses. That allocation has been vetted through work with our committee members, Chair Harrington, Commissioner Treese, and members in the community, and is ready to be launched tomorrow. So we're excited to be able to get that money out to stabilize the current emergency childcare system. But we have been hearing loud and clear across the community, and we know members have been hearing as well, that the childcare issues have grown, and we are really looking to see what we can do to support the importance of childcare stabilization and capacity building here in Washington County. So what we're hearing across the board is that school districts are working to figure out how do they create slots for teachers and staff who need to go back to teaching in a distance learning model, and their children will not be able to be in school just like others in our community. We've heard from our own staff this concern that they really are faced with the need for childcare that they hadn't anticipated, they hadn't expected. We're not able to open schools at this point based on our COVID disease rates, and we will be, all of the schools of Washington County will be doing only comprehensive distance learning. In our childcare system, we've partnered with Community Action and others and determined that there's only about 70 to 80% of our capacity that is returned as emergency childcare systems once we were able to open those up. Also, we only have about 700 slots in Washington County for school-aged children. Parents are not usually needing to consider child care services for their school-aged kids or prepared to budget for those. Next slide. As mentioned, the first priority we had in terms of the use of the $4 million in CARES Fund already allocated was to stabilize the currently licensed emergency child care providers. And the second goal that has come to our attention is expanding the system capacity. So developing a proposal to use CRF contingency funds to increase capacity for our workforce in the community. So next slide. So the $4 million provides approximately 3/4 of the support needed for all of the emergency providers. The goal was to provide enough to stabilize these businesses. They have had an impact of closure. They've had an impact in terms of reduced size that they can have. The number of children they can have has been reduced. And so the goal for the committee was to provide close to $10,000 for 380 of the child care providers. We're working with MISO to help support that in the community. And there's estimated 516 licensed providers at this time. So it would take an addition of $1.5 million to support the remaining 136 providers. At the low end, each of those providers can have 10 children if they have only one space, but there could be more, so that's an estimate. So again, if the board so chooses and would like to make a recommendation, we could get that additional $1.5 million starting out the door tomorrow, because we were ready to launch the $4 million. So the goal 2 was to, next slide. Our staff, Chair Harrington, Marnie Kyle, Director, have met with the schools on a number of issues over the last few months in terms of, at first, how are we going to deal with COVID in the schools before they shut down, and then how are we going to mitigate the disease. What's been loud and clear in the last month or so is we're going to need to figure out the child care crisis for our schools. We have heard some proposals coming forward. We've heard thoughts of having school districts with open space partner with agencies like THPRD, the YMCA, or a larger child care provider network called Champions. So they seem ready and poised to consider how could they expand community support in our community. We would encourage, if the board so chooses, to add more funding contributing to the child care system for this expansion, that we put into to place some suggested requirements, like making sure this is really not just child care, but a learning support system. So this is school-age kids, and really they need the support for distance learning that their families might not be able to provide based on the need to work or other conditions. We would also, from an equity standpoint, really suggest a requirement of so many slots of this expansion going to lower income families, and we're suggesting up to 300% of the federal poverty level. Again, thinking back to the fact that many people had not planned for this and budgeted for this, and many of our lower income wage earners have to work in the setting of the front counter or a business that can't be virtual. So we do encourage also that if we were expanding, that we had supports for those low-income wage earners to be able to participate in the DHS program that provides a stipend or coverage for employment-related daycare. So again, looking to subsidize with some of the funding, but also encourage that slots are available for low-income wage earners. So that is the suggestion and proposal. And again, thank you to both Chair Harrington, who's been working with the school districts and talking about this with our department, as well as CAO, and thank you to Commissioner Treese, who's been as well on the committee thinking about how we distribute CARES Fund to this important industry.
Commissioners, any questions or comments on this proposal?
So you'd like to have this, I guess I'm not sure if it's a question for you, Chair, or Tricia. Goal number one is the $1.5 million to be added to the $4 million grant program. Do we do that separately, or should we do that together?
The action proposal is to approve the additional allocation of up to $1.5 million to the Child Care Assistance Program and up to $5.5 million to expand system capacity to provide distance learning support services for school-age children from the CARES Act CRF contingency of $7.5 million. So that's the way that staff has packaged it up.
And that will enable you to put the 1.5 with the 4 tomorrow, and so
Right.
it'll be one package. Okay.
Correct. If the board so chooses, we would, we were ready to launch in the morning, but we could call up MISO and say, let's change. What that does change is we would no longer need to do a scoring system and a gatekeeping system for those providers. So we would quickly change the application process to just be submit your application, and we'll start processing them right away.
Okay. Well, as I said in the, go ahead, Roy. I don't want to jump in there. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Jerry. I got a flurry of calls right after our meeting from folks who were 2 mayors and a couple of people from schools who were generally in favor. And as I mentioned in the work session, there isn't any right answer how we do this, but they all had the common theme, and that was that these funds should be distributed around the county so that there isn't some areas left behind. Two, that the schools would prefer to have a direct allocation. They have grant people, they have folks who can certainly monitor this. And for Jack and others who are familiar with the federal registry and all of the things that have to be done in regards to sub-recipient funding and federal guidelines, they can do that. They have people in place, so they certainly don't rely on it. So I know there's at least 3 votes, if not all of us, and I would request whoever is dealing with this that you might consider including the schools plus. The city of Hillsborough also tells me that they're involved deeply in working in the child care area with their school district. So I'm not sure what's happening there. This is all coming so fast, it just happened. And so we're trying to, for those of us who weren't involved in the 2 commissioners who were I guess, part of that committee, the rest of us are catching up quickly. So I'm hopeful that we'll consider some of our partners and what they're wanting to have accomplished.
Thank you, Commissioners. We definitely would want as well, from a staff's perspective, that the funds are used across the whole county.
And I also think that there has been, Commissioner Rogers, to your point, there has been involvement with the school districts. And while I'm not sure exactly what you were talking about with the schools administering the grants, there's such a process that to change gears now and move away from the MISO setup to the schools would put us way back. And I think that the schools are comfortable with the $4 million plan that we have, plus the 1.5 if that's approved tonight. My understanding is that the school districts are okay with that, and they are also participating in the additional $5.5 million allocation. So it's my belief that the school systems are there.
Well, I don't want to dispute that. I'll tell you, I talked with superintendent schools for the biggest district in biggest school district in my particular district, and they said they would love to have the funds come directly to them, because that way they can deal with administrative issues, and they're quite familiar with the accounting. So again, I'm coming to this party very late and just getting it yesterday, but you may well be right. I don't dispute that, but that's information that I got at about 6:10 tonight. So,
Well, you're not, let me reassure you, you are not late to the party. This Goal 2 program came out of the meeting of last Monday that I reported to you all on Tuesday. And in your inbox during the course of, well, through Thursday of last week, you received at least 2 real-time sets of information from me about how we were scurrying to put together a program that could be responsive to the needs of the school districts, for their school district employees, as well as for Washington County employees and Clean Water Services employees. Our team has done a phenomenal job of putting this program together. Commissioner Treese and I had the opportunity to meet with the early learning experts in our HHS team just this morning to go over this proposal. So we're all living it in real time together. This afternoon's presentation was the first time that I myself saw all these aspects as well. So don't worry, you're not behind. We're doing this in real time and trying to adjust to the fact that the academic school year is launching in 3 weeks on September 14th and 1 week earlier in a couple of school districts here in Washington County that the Northwest ESD is supporting.
And Commissioner Rogers, thank you. And also to our conversation earlier today, this is not a final plan. These are really just the bones of what we're hearing. And if it makes the most sense, instead of going to an RFP to the providers, to divvy it up with the schools, contracting with the providers, that's another option, and we can certainly look at that. We just want to make sure that every school district would be able to do that, because again, the goal to get it across to all the county. So I think there's lots of ways that this could happen, but one of the ways that it seems to be most advancing quickly is a school district provider coordination.
And the key barrier that they all identified was the money to invest in the program. And that's what this Goal 2 proposal identifies. Commissioner Treese?
Well, I was scratching my neck, but also I do have a comment to make. Never miss an opportunity, right? The other thing, Commissioner Rogers, it does, I can understand why it seems fast, but the chair outlined what the communication pieces have been, but if this feels so similar to what we went through a few weeks ago with these small grant programs or the grants for the small businesses. There's so many similarities. The one problem that I'd like to just put a light on for the childcare group is because there is more experience in our contracts group, in Jack's group, and other groups, there were more barriers outlined earlier for the childcare money, and there'd been changes in the CARES Act regulations. So they've been held back from doing some of these things, waiting to kind of go through the appropriate hoops as well. So I can understand why it feels that way, and I can understand kind of the herky-jerky nature of how we've progressed, and now all of a sudden it's, we got to get this done. But that's the reality of what we've been dealing with. So I'm glad that you heard from the school districts about the need. I'm glad that you heard from the mayors. I think we all are in concert that the need is there and the need's great. And we're going to do the best job that we can do to make sure that the money gets into the right hands with the right partners.
And if I may add to that, the timeliness is really this first 1.5 million to be added to the MISO contract, and this 5.5 million as requested at the work session. Tricia has taken note on bringing back staff reports on specific program development goals. So really the board is taking action to approve the direction of this allocation of supporting this community need. And we can definitely bring back programmatic details later for your board's consideration as well.
Well, and I think you've heard the message. Actually, this is we're breaking old norms here when we move this quickly as a bureaucracy. Usually, it takes us months to get to this point. So the fact that we've done this in 8 days, we should get some sort of a gold star for this. I'm completely supportive of this. Again, as I said in work session, I look at this, I want to make sure this is a county-wide project. I also had conversations this morning this afternoon, and in our hour-and-a-half break, I got a phone call from a mayor and a superintendent. So I accused them both of eavesdropping on our conversations. But both of them were encouraging me, of course, to move ahead on this, which I don't have a problem with, but also saying that we need to make sure this is countywide, and we also need to make sure we have a lot of involvement with our school districts, however that would work. So I've said this in work session that I'm certainly going to vote for this motion and add an additional request on it that we have a staff report before we issue any dollars.
And just a process reminder is that since this contract with $5.5 million, the contract will come back to the board for approval anyway, so we can definitely combine a staff report before contract goes out.
So we're going to be able to do that by next Tuesday, because I think that's the chair and all of ours request is that we get this money out as quickly as possible. Is that?
Point of clarification here, you are talking about the 5.5.
I am talking about the 5.5.
Okay, I just want, not the other that's going out tomorrow morning.
The 1.5 is going to go tomorrow.
Perfect.
So, yeah, no, I'm talking about the 5.5. That's why I was asking if we bifurcate these two motions.
We can certainly make every effort. It is a bit of a Herculean task in a week to see if we can get all the players lined up, but we will certainly work to bring you the best amount of detail that we can.
Well, and I think hopefully along this lines is that our partners that are going to be involved in this process, we're communicating the message that we have green-lighted this process. So it's not like they can't start planning tomorrow. They can start planning, and then we'll make sure we follow up and fund the process when it's been vetted and approved.
I'm wondering if it might be useful to loosen it up a little bit so that next Tuesday you just come in and give us a report out in terms of how the dialogue has been going with the school districts, and that instead of trying to have the contract, I mean, if you've got the contract or contracts done for next Tuesday, awesome. But I think the school districts are looking for help with financial help for this. And I think we've got expert teams that know how to maximize partnership. And so I think, getting a report back, a verbal report back next Tuesday in terms of how things are shaping up, and then just make sure that you're able to effectuate the dollars as fast as possible from there. It could go to the following Tuesday, fine. Because we know that we've got this deadline breathing down our necks. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I'm good
It
with
sounds
that.
very reasonable. I'd also suggest that if that contract comes together in the middle of the week, I know I would be willing to meet on a Zoom meeting or whatever to approve that outside of our normal course of action.
Yep.
If we do what Mr. Rapplier will be looking at me, provide public notice and do those
Yep,
types of
it's
things ahead of
emergency
time.
meeting, we just need 24 hours
Right.
notice. Yep.
So I'd be willing to do that, and I'm certain that the rest of us would as well.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes, thank you. That addresses my concerns. I think Commissioner Woolley said it well. Their schools just want to understand clearly that they're going to have a voice in that, and it sounds like we're going to do that. So it's perfect. And I'm talking about the 5.5 as well.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? Okay, I'll just close it out. I really want to say thank you to the Washington County team for practicing the art of the possible. The school district superintendents, when we met with them on July 14th or so, let us know that there were a variety of concerns they were looking into, whether it was for hybrid or for comprehensive distance learning. We posed a few different questions to them, and we came back to their needs at their next monthly all supervisors, superintendents meeting just last Monday. So, good job from our team to practice the art of the possible, taking my initial scoping of the problem out to try and really get it down to what we might be able to do very, very quickly. We couldn't do it without you.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the additional allocation of up to 1.5 million to the Child Care Assistance Program and up to 5.5 million to expand system capacity to provide distance learning support services for school-aged children from the CARES Act CRF contingency fund of 7.5 million.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to say, again, I said it in work session, thank you for your work, Chair Harrington, with the school, with the superintendents. Thank you to the work on the child care team. Please take that message back to them. They've been really diligent about trying to get all this done and trying to practice the art of the possible. So, and thank you to the rest of my commissioners. This is an important piece, and I know that we will be held in high regard for taking this action.
Job well done by Evan Weaver as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, 8:36 p.m. Do we have anyone else who would like to address us during oral communication?
We have none, Madam Chair.
Okay, I would like to share the constituent report summary that I usually do at the first oral communication, but of course I forgot. We've had over 39 emails that have come in just over the last week to the full board. 5 of those with regard to COVID-19, various questions, comments, 14 with regard to racial justice and police accountability, 2 with land use and transportation, and a grand total of 18 in the other category, with several folks giving us, letting us know that they're interested in requesting additional ballot drop boxes for the upcoming November election. We will be having a presentation at the board meeting on Tuesday, September 8th, so stay tuned to that, folks. So that's it for oral communication for tonight. For board announcements, as usual, I announce upcoming meetings. Like it or not, folks, it's the end of August, and we're looking at facing September right before us. I can't believe it, COVID time. So Next Tuesday, September 1st, we'll have a pair of meetings, work session at 8:30 in the morning, board meeting at 10. We have a roundtable with our new CAO on Thursday, September 3rd. On Tuesday, September 8th, it's just work session day, no business meeting that day. Oh, so, yeah, I'd forgotten about that with regard to a contract. We'll have a board meeting if we need it. Tuesday, September 15th, work session at 8:30 a.m., board meeting at 10. And then just 2 more Tuesdays we're looking at for September 22nd. We'll have a work session at 2 in the afternoon and a board meeting at 6:30 p.m. And we've added a set of meetings for Tuesday, September 28th, a work session at 8:30 a.m., a board meeting at 10 a.m. And as announced last week, we'll have a State of the County presentation brought to you by Zoom at 6 p.m. It'll be a long day.
What was that date one more time? September?
September 28th.
Thank you.
Excuse me, 29th.
29th, okay.
Are there any other board announcements this evening? Nope. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn tonight's meeting. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, that same question came up. I can't remember, was it? Yeah, I just want to do that.